We should start now.
A very good afternoon to all of you. This is Dr. Muskan. I'm working as an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Vivekananda College, Delhi University. Namaskar. I welcome you all. First of all, I want to say a big thank you to the organizing committee, especially Dr. Smriti Singh ma'am and Dr. Pramod Kumar Singh sir. Thank you so much for providing us such a democratic atmosphere during this entire FDP so far. I request to all the participants to kindly put your phones on silent mode and please keep your video audio off during the lecture. And please put your queries, your question on the WhatsApp group before 10 minutes of the completion of the lecture. I request, I feel so pleased and delighted to introduce with you Dr. Divya Jalan ma'am, Director Adi. Ma'am is working so hard to make the society more inclusive. Along with Divya ma'am, we also have Shamala ma'am with us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming. We welcome you from the core of our heart. I now request our technical coordinator to kindly run the PPT.
Yes, just give me a minute.
Sure.
So while the PPT is coming on, I'll take this opportunity to thank Dr. Smriti Singh for inviting me to this forum. I see this as a great opportunity to interact with so many of the teachers and professors, lecturers of Delhi University colleges. And all of you are experts in your own field. It would be wonderful to talk to you a little bit about my field of work.
Welcome, ma'am. Welcome once again. Dr. Divya Jalan ma'am is a researcher, educationist, and also the chairperson of ADI. आदि से यहाँ मेरा मतलब आरंभ से है. If we talk about Dr. Divya Jalan ma'am, ma'am is a multi-dimensional personality. She is an educationist, an activist with special interest in the development of children with disability and economic disadvantages. She was educated at Calcutta University and University of London and did her doctoral work through SNDT University, Mumbai. She has a diploma in teaching physically disabled children and a master's in early childhood education, both from the University of London. Her doctoral research at SNDT University, Mumbai was based on her work on introducing reflective practices as a tool for skill improvement and empowerment of teachers in government school in rural areas of Maharashtra. If we talk about her contributions, she is a founder member of Action for Ability Development and Inclusion, ADI. ADI is a right-based organization and works in the area of direct services as well as advocacy through legislation and policy. As a founder member of ADI, she has been a pioneer in setting up services for people with disabilities as well as training professionals in the field of education and special education. Presently, ma'am is serving as director of ADI. Dr. Divya Jalan has also been a member of the General Council and trustee of Common Cause since June 1999. If we talk about her academic engagements, Dr. Divya Jalan is on the executive boards of several organizations, including the Rehabilitation Council of India and the Good Earth Education Foundation. Through Good Earth Education Foundation, her focus has been to work with educational thinkers and teachers in rural schools in Maharashtra and Rajasthan. run by NGOs and local governments, with the goal of improving the quality of teaching and learning in these schools. As a trustee of Pratham, Delhi, she is a part of group that that evolves strategies for the education of preschool and young children with economic disadvantages in the city of Delhi. As a member of the State Advisory Council and the Curriculum Reform Committee constituted by Delhi government in 2018 and 2020 respectively. She is a part of a core group working towards improving initiatives for inclusive education in Delhi schools. She is also a member of the Advisory Council of Association for Childhood Education International, Washington, D.C. Dr. Divya Jalan ma'am's experience with the Head Start program in the USA and the working in the English school system has deepened her understanding of general themes as well as culture influenced issues in child development. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for fitting us in your busy schedule and giving us your valuable time. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. I am very sorry. I take responsibility for some of the oversights that have come up in this very generous, long introduction. Some of my past positions have come up seeming like present positions. I was director of ADI, I was chairperson of ADI, but no more. So I was also member of Rehabilitation Council and no more. Why I take responsibility is because this did come up to me, but it was so long, I guess I didn't read it carefully enough. So I'm very sorry about that. Sorry, Smriti, I really must. I mean, with so much back and forth, I left these mistakes in.
It doesn't even matter, ma'am. You were there. That is what is important. And what you're doing at present also, at this age, that is inspiration for us.
Thank you very much. So shall we start the PPT that I had said?
Yes, ma'am. In just a minute.
So who's going to do it, just so that I can...
Yeah. Ma'am, so this...
Nupur would be doing, ma'am.
Nupur,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is, of course, as everyone knows, is the refresher course, Emerging Accessible Technologies for Teachers in Higher Education. And this particular talk, next slide, is a part of this course. I have decided to call my talk today, Minimizing Barriers, Maximizing Participation. So all of us live within the, can we go back to the slide? So all of us live within the constraints of our social structures, our families, our regions, our education, our economic situation. And those are limitations. There are often barriers within that which may minimize or which may limit our participation in society. But I think with people with disabilities, these barriers may be a little more in place and their participation is actually minimized a lot more than it happens with people who don't have disabilities often. Although there are a lot of other marginalizations also. Disability is not the only one. So barriers, it's a question of whatever barriers any person faces and how we can minimize those and maximize participation. Next slide. So coming to talk a little bit about disability, our whole current understanding of disability comes from the definition that has been used in the Persons with Disabilities Act, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, that was passed in 2016. And the definition in this act is based on the United Nations Convention on Rights of People with Disabilities, which was ratified in India in 2007. And the convention was probably, can we go back to the slide, please? So I will say when the slide has to be changed. Nupur, is that all right? Okay, so this was based on the conventions on rights of people with disabilities, and India ratified this convention in 2007. Next slide. So according to this definition, persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments. So within physical impairments, of course, there are the orthopedic ones, polio, and all the neurological conditions have also been included within this conditions like cerebral palsy, spina bifida, etc. And mental refers to areas of mental illness, people who have mental illness and have therefore difficulty in participation. Intellectual impairments are limitations in cognitive functioning, which sometimes is a situation on its own, and sometimes we have intellectual impairment along with another condition, like could be cerebral palsy, not that all people with cerebral palsy have intellectual impairment, or it could be with Down syndrome. Again, not all people with Down syndrome may have intellectual impairment, but it may be attached to that. And sensory impairments, the visual and auditory ones, of course, are the most well known. So in this whole group of impairments, when there is interaction within the social environment, within the social structure, then often barriers come up. And these barriers are not useful for full and effective participation in society on an equal basis for people with disabilities. And this is what we are going to talk a little bit more about in detail. What are these barriers and what can we do about them? Because for us, it is very important to see action. All our conversation should result in some action on the ground. Next slide, please. So I want to start with the biggest barrier that comes in the way of inclusion of people with disabilities is that they are very strongly identified as disabled. Now, all of us have different identity markers. We have gender, we have caste, we have socioeconomic status, we have profession, we have region. So we have different identities or identity markers, and different ones would be important in different situations at different times of life. But when we have disability as the strongest identity marker, then it actually magnifies all the differences that the person may have with other people, and it often results in marginalization. I've got a very short clip of about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Can we play the clip, please?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
This is Aparna. She loves chess and Shah Rukh Khan. Her best friend is Swati. She also has visual impairment. This is Neeraj. He plays many instruments. He loves Mohammad Rafi and cricket. He also uses crutches for mobility.
चंदा है तू मेरा सूरज है तू
This is Raj Bala.
मेरी आँखों का तारा है तू जीती हूँ मैं बस तुझे देख कर
With her husband and daughter. She loves cooking and watching TV.
है तू हाँ मेरी आँखों का तारा है
She also has cerebral palsy. Look beyond the disability. Look at the person.
Thank you. So here is a perspective that people with disabilities have a lot of other things going for them. And while disability is certainly one of the characteristics that the person has, if we keep it in that perspective, then the participation becomes very easy. Can we go to the next slide?
Yeah. Just put it.
So in every situation, we have barriers and we have facilitators. And if we kind of train our eyes and minds and our work to looking at there being few barriers and more facilitators, then it facilitates the work of all people. So people live and conduct their lives in the following environments. And the first one is the physical environment. So the physical one, of course, refers to all the spaces that are around us, the buildings, the rooms, the furniture, the machines that are around us, the gadgets that we may be using. And then if we go out of the building, then it's all the roads, the footpaths, the parks, the all the physical spaces of any institutions that we need to go to. So these could be hospitals or cinema halls, theaters, whatever. So all the physical spaces, all the physical things that would hinder or help everyone to access this. So we talk a lot about accessibility of physical spaces. So like physical space, we have the social space environment around us. And social environment is, of course, of all the social structures that we have. And the first and most important one, of course, is family. We have family, we have friends, we have colleagues at work, we have communities, we have neighbors. All these people make up the social environment of all of us individuals. And then a very important one is, of course, the financial or the economic environment that we are in. And money does have a great role to play in removing barriers. Sometimes we do need, we need things that would help in making life more accessible for us. For example, if I'm not able to walk, then a wheelchair is very important for me. And wheelchair has a certain cost. But if I can have a wheelchair, a powered wheelchair, then I actually become a lot more independent. So the degree of independence that I have would depend on what kind of equipment I have to move around. And there are enough examples that all of you can think about, I'm sure. So transport in almost all areas, the economic and financial resource becomes either a big barrier or a big facilitator. The next environment that I would talk about is the psychological or emotional environment which is around us. And in this, I think of the values that any particular society has. I think about the perceptions that people have about anything, and in this context, especially about disability. I think of the cultural expectations that there may be from any individual and then an individual with disability. Cultural practices that may help a person with disability. For example, I remember when we had just started working with people with disabilities, often the parents used to be worried about who would take care of their children once they are not there. As their children were growing up, parents were growing older alongside. And because of our cultural practice of living in larger families, most was I muted? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But
Yes,
now
ma'am, you were
audible.
muted for little while. I was unmuting myself.
How did I get muted?
I don't know. Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
So what did we not hear? Anyway, shall I just keep going ahead? I'm not sure what.
Yeah, just 1 second, ma'am. Are you able to see the screen, ma'am?
I'm able to see the screen and you are able to hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, okay. So I was talking about the attitudes, the values, the perceptions around disability that would act either as a barrier or as a facilitator. And when we come to institutions, then I see government as the biggest overarching institution which governs the lives of every citizen within a country. So government policies are a huge facilitator in the process of providing access to people with disabilities. Government, along with policies, also have lots of administrative rules and regulations. And those also could either support any person, including the person with disability, or it could be become a big barrier. So the institutional government is, of course, the first big institution that all of us have to deal with. Alongside government, Workplaces are the second kind of institutions. People with disabilities may work in smaller workplaces. They may be part of very large institutions. And sometimes the institutional rules and regulations hinder the access. Hospitals, if we look at hospitals, something that everyone needs to access all the time, then sometimes there's not even physical access available easily. And then sometimes there are other issues of attitudes or issues of financial resources when you have to put the money in before you can be admitted in the hospital or before a doctor would see you, then all those things become a barrier for a person with disability. Schools are another big institutions that people with disabilities need to access. And of course, there are government schools, government-run schools, so people don't have to pay for education. But getting in to the school would also be a barrier, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about it later. Recreational facilities are another big, parks, theaters, cinema halls, etc., which have lots of physical access difficulties as well as other difficulties. So they become big barriers. Next slide. So some of the very common barriers that are encountered all across these environments that I have talked about. The first one is the lack of information in simple and accessible formats. So for a person with disability, this becomes a huge hindrance if we are not able to put out all our information in a way that people who have different disabilities, who have different impairments, can access that information, then that becomes a barrier. If I don't know about things, how can I act on them? So, I mean, what comes to mind is like sometimes on boards in institutions, in colleges, in universities, there would be information put up. And if a person is not able to access that information because they are not able to see or they are not able to read the small print in which it is written, or they are not able to isolate that bit of information from the clutter of notifications that are on top of that board, then that becomes a real limitation. So this is lack of information on part of the person with disability. For other people also, lack of information becomes a huge big barrier for the person with disabilities. And these people can be the common man, woman on the street who doesn't know a lot about disability or people with disabilities, professionals. I remember again when we started our work, diagnosis of disability used to be very delayed because doctors were not yet sure. There were not enough systems at that time which could identify the disability very quickly. And then from that on, the experience of doctors was that if they could do nothing, that there was nothing to be done. So the information that went to the parents was there's nothing that can be done. Medically, nothing could be done, but a lot could be done in schools, in families, at home. So that information needed to be, once that information spread to doctors, it became very easy for people with disabilities to access those services. So that is what is about lack of information. The second big barrier comes from looking for a cure. So some of these impairments. Shall I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am, if you give me a second, I will just check where is the sound coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am, most definitely. I'll just very quickly share the screen again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somewhere, if we are trying to be what again is called normal, then we only see how the person is different or how the person is not normal. So then we tend to focus on what the person cannot do or does not have, rather than taking normality as a spectrum, rather than taking normality as a range and abilities as a range, diversity as the norm, rather than looking for a standard normal person or a standard normal behavior. Then we would be able to see the person and see what he or she can do, rather than always looking at what the person cannot do or does not have. The next kind of barrier that comes up is a lack of understanding of the abilities and specific needs of the person with disability. This, of course, also keeps changing. What a person is not able to do today, he or she may be able to do 2 years later or 3 years later. And there are some specific needs, of course, that have to be catered for. But when we don't know this, then there are two kind of scenarios that happen. Either there is overprotection, we try and we think that this person is not going to be able to do anything, so why trouble this person? Why make it difficult for this person? Or there are under expectations. So under expectations are when overprotection is when you don't provide the opportunity, and under expectation is when you don't have the expectation at all. So the question of providing the opportunity doesn't arise. And unfortunately, often people with disabilities have actually fought for more independence. They have looked for more autonomy, but often our concern or our lack of understanding about what they are able to do. I mean, some things are very typical when children are growing up, when they are becoming adolescents and adults. All parents, all families go through this tussle between how much autonomy can they have and how much control do they need to have. And with a person with disabilities, it gets a little bit more magnified. So I can think of many different scenarios, experiences of people within my knowledge. I remember once one of our students, his mother passed away, and he, being the adult son, expected actually to do the rites for the mother. And the family was just absolutely not able to understand that A, he would be able to do it, and B, that the whatever physical limitations he may have, he actually had complete understanding of what needed to be done. Or another of our ex-students who got a job, but the work required her to take an auto to get to the workplace. And she was, whatever, 18, 19 at that point of time. And parents were very concerned about her going in an auto by herself. And therefore, she was not allowed to take this work on. And this actually resulted in a great deal of frustration, which also came out as anger, a lot of anger, making lives actually very difficult for herself as well as for her parents. But that came from a lack of understanding of specific needs and abilities. And then, of course, attitudes are great barriers. There's stigma. Somehow, disability in one area, somehow it makes the person less in some eyes, and therefore there is a stigma to it. There are lots of myths attached to disabilities. For example, people with disabilities have do not have any health issues as a part of the disability. People may have health issues like people who are not disabled also have health issues, but their health parameters are somehow not seen separately than their disability. So that those kind of myths which become barriers. Superstitions, of course, in every culture there are, but certainly in our Indian culture, there's a lot of superstition about karma, about mother's fault, about this happening because the window was left open, or this happening because the mother went out. So those are the kind of things. Stereotypes are, of course, certain people, if there's visual impairment, then there's only certain kind of work that will be useful. If there's cognitive impairment, then repetitive work is the one that is most useful to give. So these, or that, children with Down syndromes are always happy children. So while some of these may be useful to have as background, there's certainly as much diversity within each disability as it is within a non-disabled group. Next. So access of physical spaces is certainly a very big barrier. So at homes, you have people who are wheelchair users living on the third floor or a fourth floor. That becomes a huge barrier in even going to the hospital, in going to schools every day. Toilets. I have to tell you, on this one trip from Delhi to Alwar, I was going to take a wheelchair person user to visit our program in the rural areas of Alwar district. And I visited 17 different toilets on the way to see if any would be usable for her. And there was only one that I found, and that was only in a 5-star hotel, where the toilet was large enough, the door was large enough for wheelchair to go in and for it to turn around. So what happens with toilets is, from some other toilets that I saw, there was a ramp and there was a toilet cubicle which was larger than other cubicles, but not large enough for the wheelchair to go in. So toilets become a big barrier. In fact, she had come all the way from Germany to visit, and she was not able to go with us. That was a big barrier. She was also a big funder. Anyway, libraries. Within the university system, libraries would be very useful to look at as possible barriers. Are people with visual impairment able to use it? Are the aisles big enough for wheelchair to go through? Are the books organized in a way that even a person with learning disability would be able to find the book that he or she is looking for? Lecture rooms, of course. Canteens for students are really a very important place to be in with their friends. So accessibility of canteens. And even when all these are thought of, often the administrative offices are not thought of as places which would also require people with disabilities to go to, just like any other student. Staff rooms, sports fields, music and art halls. So all these are areas where access can become difficult. Of course, inaccessible roads, even that one little step which is between the road and the footpath, if it does not have a slope, then a wheelchair cannot move cannot even go on the footpath because every once in a while there are roads in between. So inaccessibility of roads, uneven path, those become big barriers. Lack of appropriate aids. People with disability can become quite independent. Sometimes they require certain aids at home. They require aids in school. A person, say a person with low vision, the minute they have appropriate glasses, the impairment, the glasses are the facilitators and the impairment is not a barrier anymore. So in colleges, in workplaces, in any other setting, it is very important to have appropriate aids. I was talking about wheelchairs before, and again, I would share this story of one of our colleagues who who used to walk with crutches before, became a wheelchair user, and then was helped around in a wheelchair. And then he got access to a motorized wheelchair. And he said to us that at the age of 52, I'm again able to move around on my own. The sense of independence, it was not only about moving around. It was about the dignity that he gained back by being able to be independent. It is about the confidence that you get as an individual mover. That is very important. Lack of financial resources, we talked about a little bit before, how useful it is, how important it is, and certainly with disabilities, one does need more help in terms of human help, one needs in transport. Now, the Delhi Metro takes great pride in it being fully accessible for wheelchair users, for people with visual impairment. And yet the experience of one of our colleagues was that when she stood in front of the elevator to go down, there were a lot of other people. And she said, every time I stand there, a lot of other people, everybody else just quickly gets into the elevator and the elevator is full. So while they have a choice of using the elevator or stairs, I don't. And she said that normally I end up waiting 4 or 5 times for elevator to go up and down before somehow, either because somebody else helps me to get in or because there is enough room in the elevator for all the people who are around there for me to get in. So here is a resource that has been created accessible, the metro, and yet because of the cultural situation, the person could not. In some of the Western countries, of course, queues are very important. And when you are in queue, you wait your turn and you would have definitely gotten into that elevator. So the financial resources are important. Next slide. So I suggest that people with disabilities are equal citizens of our country. They have equal rights and they have equal responsibilities. So removal of all these barriers that I talked about to ensure the inclusion of people with disabilities is the foremost responsibility of all stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? The stakeholders are people with disabilities themselves, of course, people, their families, all the professionals, whether they are working in the field of disability or not. All professionals need to ensure that people with disabilities are included. Government, of course, as the one overarching institution system, and all citizens, all neighbors, all citizens are the stakeholders to remove these barriers. Next slide. Smriti, I have 15 minutes more. It's about 3:45.
No, ma'am, you have time till.
Okay. So then inclusion. So I thought we'll talk a little bit about what is inclusion. So inclusion is often thought of as you either have inclusion or you don't have inclusion. Now, inclusion is it's not an event. It's not a one-time thing. Inclusion is actually a process, and it has many, many, many different shades. You may be including in some ways and not including in another. You may be at the first stage of inclusion. So I wanted to talk a little bit about different shades of inclusion. And again, I'll give a short, small story, which is to do with not with disability. So we were invited to a small lunch at a friend's house. And when I got there, I saw the table was laid for 6 people. There were 2 of us and 2 of the hosts and 1 other guest. So I was waiting for the other guests to come. And then once we all sat down, the cook, after bringing all the food to the table, sat down to eat with us. Now, in India, it doesn't happen very often that the cook joins the hosts and guests and has a meal for them. She was nicely dressed. She was dressed for a lunch, and we started eating together. So that was our first stage of inclusion. This was the the hosts had ensured that the cook was included. She was the only other person in the house at that time. She was included in this lunch. But what did we do after that? We continued speaking in English. We continued, this was a group of journalists, group of, very well-educated people who were interested in politics, who were interested in education actually, in a big way. So we continued with our discussion in English about politics and education. And later on, I thought we really didn't do enough for including the person, but it was the first stage of inclusion where she was physically with us. So all institutions can start this process of inclusion from wherever they are. And then they move along the path to achieve maximum inclusion for maximum number of people. And this again is relevant both for people with disabilities as well as for other marginalized groups. In some places, even gender would be an area of marginalization. Girls would not get what boys would get. So wherever we are, we should move along that path of inclusion in a way that we can achieve maximum inclusion for all. And this whole process of inclusion can be designed in many different flexible ways, but the basic principles have to be understood and the basic stages have to be understood. So let's go to the next slide. These are the steps of inclusion as worked out by UNESCO in 2005 in their document on inclusion. So the 3 steps to inclusion, the first one is presence, just being there, being part of the group. Second is participation, and third is achievement. And I'll talk about all these 3 in a little more detail. And I've chosen only the educational inclusion as an example to talk today, because I'm talking to people who are actually most involved in education. Next slide. So inclusion of students in mainstream and educational settings is somewhat new, and again, depending on which country you are looking at, the stage of inclusion is different. In our country, the two important acts were Right to Education in 2010, which talked about mainstreaming all children to be in mainstream schools, talked about the school education, and the RPWD Act of 2016, which talks about inclusion at the higher education level. So the first thing is, of course, for all people who want to have access to higher education, and for all children to have access to schools and have access in mainstream schools. It's a question of choice. I know that sometimes people prefer to have to be in institutions, families or person with disability, child with disability. But it's not a question of where they are, but it's a question of having the choice. When the person, if the person wants to be in a mainstream school, then the person must have a choice. So the first thing is, of course, about getting admission into school. Once the kids are in also, the attendance of students is actually sometimes a big problem, which then ends up them not being able to cope with the work in schools or colleges. So there are reasons like health, there are other needs, there are sometimes surgeries, particularly with certain kind of disabilities. And sometimes there's also a lot of demotivation because the children are there, but often they are not, they're not actually getting a lot from being in that environment. And our next slide we'll talk a little bit more about it. So they're not able to participate, and they're demotivated and attendance falls. Sometimes there's, of course, also the problem of getting to school. So sometimes, often, people with disabilities, young children with disabilities, may need help to get to school, may need special transport to get to school or college. And if that is not available, then they cannot be present in the colleges or in the school system. And missing students are, of course, even today, if you see the ratio of enrollment in non-disabled population and disabled population, then the gaps are much larger. So the number of children, in fact, if you look at the whole data, and if you see the number of children who are not enrolled, and then if you look at, you see them, whether they are disabled or not, see a very large percentage of children with disability who are not enrolled at all. And this is even more so in higher education. So this is something to be aware of. Next slide. So when we come to participation, one is just being there. A lot of the time children come in and they may just sit at the back. If the next 3-4 things that we are going to talk about, if these are not in place, then they are not able to participate in the educational process. So if we look at the first concept is universal design in curriculum. The concept of universal design comes from designing buildings actually. So if you have a ramp in a building, that can be used by people who need wheelchairs, as also by people who may not need wheelchairs. So that is seen as a universal design. And going further from that, we need to have curriculum which is designed in a way that can be accessed by everybody. So this would talk about content of the curriculum. It would talk about the delivery of the curriculum, the careful attention to see that the way it is transacted, are all people with various disabilities able to access them? And lastly, the assessment, of course, has to be designed in a way that can be understood and that people with disabilities can access. But this universal design of curriculum is actually beyond college level. This is something that has to be done at a higher level, the designing of curriculum. Then we come to teacher skill. And time and again, it has been seen that when teachers have information about disability, when they have some training in how to bring that little extra bit. Special education is actually mostly very good education. Good education is something that helps all students. But that little bit of variation that may be needed, the more comfortable the teachers are, the more children with various disabilities or young adults, older students in colleges will be included within the system. So teacher skill is actually very important. So as teachers, we really do need to pick up that information and pick up that skill whenever we need to work with a young student within our classes. Administrative processes, of course, we've talked about it a little bit in detail. Attendance is one big administrative process. Sometimes a card for examination will not be given to the student unless the attendance is met. And sometimes with people with disabilities, there are issues in attendance. And procedures in the disability certificates are sometimes asked for. And if people don't have it, then that becomes a problem in participation. Resources, of course, whatever, whether it's technological resource like laptops, like softwares, like, communication aids that are needed, and or human resource people who can help in that little area where the person with disability cannot cope. So that is an important participation issue. And reasonable accommodation is the concept of providing those systems which would facilitate the students' participation in the classroom. And sometimes these are very small and simple accommodations, and these are extremely useful. I mean, if I think of just providing a little extra time would be seen as a reasonable accommodation, or providing providing rest if a person requires it in between, or providing a laptop. So reasonable accommodations are those kind of things which help in participation. Next slide. And the last is achievement. If you have presence, if you have good participation, then you will have achievement. And in achievement, the most important point is that achievement is not that one thing. Achievement is different people have different achievements. All of us live within our structures and constraints. So achievement is realizing potential for each one of us to have the opportunity to realize our full potential. So for this, the first thing is, of course, to get into an educational institution. And the second big step is moving from education to work. So all the young students that you have within your institution, how many are going to move from education to work? How many would have the choice to move from education to work? And whether people with disabilities would have more difficulty in getting there. I think they would, they might. And achieving autonomy is the last achievement. As adults, all of us need autonomy. All of us want to make our own decisions, to have the choice of living independently, to be able to work, to be able to earn enough to live on our own. So achieving autonomy. So these are the three sort of life, important for life, moving, looking ahead from education, where we need to be, just like for people who don't have disability, for people with disabilities, these are the same areas. So I have two short clips, one which would talk about work and one which would talk about companionship and family. So let's go to the next slide and let's see the first short clip. This is a 5-minute clip.
अपने मन में उठने वाले इन सवालों के जवाब आज डॉली ढूंढ चुकी है।
मुझको ऐसा लगता था कि लोग मेरी बात समझ नहीं पाते हैं, इसलिए मुझको गुस्सा आता था, शर्म आती थी। मुझसे बड़ा मिला और मैंने लोगों से बातचीत करना शुरू किया है। ये इतना मुश्किल नहीं था, मुझको अपनी सोच बदलनी थी।
पेपर बैग बनाने में उन्होंने महारत हासिल कर ली कि आज वो ट्रेनर हैं, बाहर दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में जाती हैं सिखाने के लिए। फिर उन्होंने ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग करना सीखा पेपर पे और कपड़े पे।
डॉली के आत्मविश्वास ने उड़ान तब भरी जब उसने एक डेंटल क्लिनिक में काम करना शुरू किया। डॉली को दिया गया ये मौका उसकी काबिलियत को सामने लाने का माध्यम बना।
पेशेंट को पहचानना हो गया, पेशेंट से इंटरेक्शन होगा, पेशेंट से क्या काम करना है। शी इज वेरी मच फाइन इन दैट, शी इज वेरी क्विक लर्नर। कोई गलती हो जाती है अगर हम उसको बताते हैं तो इमीडिएट वो रिस्पॉन्ड करके उसको ठीक करती है और बहुत अच्छे से इम्प्रूव कर देती है उसको।
एक प्रोफेशनल सोच से भरे माहौल ने डॉली की योग्यता को परखा। इरादों की पक्की डॉली ने कड़ी मेहनत और लगन से काम में दक्षता हासिल की। अब डॉली क्लिनिक के अधिकतर काम खुद ही संभाल लेती है।
अभी मेरे जो पुराने रिसेप्शनिस्ट डॉली के साथ वो हैं, उनके फ्रैक्चर हो गया था पैर में 1 मंथ के लिए। तो डॉली ने अपने जहाँ वो आदि जाते हैं वहाँ 1 मंथ की पूरा छुट्टी लिया और पूरा 2 टाइम, मॉर्निंग भी और इवनिंग भी, यहाँ आके पूरी तरह सपोर्ट किया कि मुझे लगा ही नहीं कि मैना नहीं है यहाँ पर।
पहले थोड़ा मैं भी डरती थी इसको कहीं ले जाने के लिए, भाई ठीक से चल नहीं पाती है, बोल नहीं पाती है, लोग क्या कहेंगे इसके बारे में। तो मेरे को भी थोड़ी शर्म सी महसूस होती थी, इसको मैं घर छोड़ जाती थी, कहीं भी जाती थी। तो अब तो ये मेरे साथ जाती है, कहीं मार्केट जाना हो, किसी रिश्तेदार के घर जाना हो तो ये कहती है मम्मी मैं भी चलूंगी। मैं कहती हूँ ठीक है तुम चलना। बल्कि रिलेटिव्स भी अभी से बुलाते हैं और पसंद करते हैं।
जैसे मुझे मेरा आत्मविश्वास बनना, मैं तो सीखा जानना मेरे शांत हो गया। अब मैं और ज्यादा पैसे कमाना चाहती हूँ ताकि मैं अपना और अपनी मम्मी का पूरा खर्च उठा सकूं। अब मैं काम भी कर रही हूँ और मैं अपने जिंदगी में खुश भी हूँ। मेरे आत्मविश्वास ही मेरे पहचान वाली है।
डॉली के इस आत्मविश्वास का आधार है उसकी मेहनत और उस पर किया गया भरोसा जो उसे मिला काम करने के एक मौके के रूप में, जिसने डॉली के जीवन को एक नई दिशा दी और समाज को दिया सक्रिय सहयोग के लिए एक और जिम्मेदार नागरिक।
Next slide. Can we have the next slide?
Yes, sure, ma'am.
Can we just wait for 1 minute?
Yes, sure, ma'am.
So I just want to draw your attention to few of the words that you heard in the last slide, in this last clip that you saw. One was the mother says, "Log kya kahenge?" Kadi mehnat, lagan. Dolly talks about sharam aati thi, gussa aata tha. And then विश्वास किया गया उस पर भरोसा किया गया, उसे मौका दिया गया. And then Dolly talks about आत्मविश्वास, and she talks about the desire to अपना खर्चा और अपनी मम्मी का खर्चा मैं पूरा उठा सकूं. The need for financial autonomy is a very big and important need. Okay, the next clip, this is a 2-minute clip.
सोचा ही नहीं था मेरे घर में कि मेरी शादी होगी. उन्होंने हमेशा मेरी सिस्टर के बारे में सोचा, तो मैं भी उस टाइम पे सोच रही थी यार मेरे बारे में कोई नहीं सोचता, सब वो तो मेरे से छोटी है और उसके लिए लड़का देखा जा रहा है. एक दिन अचानक से मुझे एक फोन आया और वो सैम का फोन था और उन्होंने मुझे प्रपोज किया. तो वो दिन मेरी जिंदगी का बहुत बड़ा दिन था. मैं शॉक थी, मेरे पैरों से जमीन निकल गई थी और वो जवाब मांग रहे हैं, मेरे पास कोई जवाब भी नहीं था. बस इतना कहा कि मैं अभी बात नहीं कर सकती, मैं ऑफिस में हूँ. फोन कट कर दिया. तो मैं काफी देर तक शॉक में थी, नहीं समझ में आया क्या करूं क्या कहूं. कि अपने फ्रेंड से बात की तो सबने मुझे ये कहा कि ये बहुत अच्छा वक्त है, तुम हाँ कर दो. तब मैंने यही कहा अगर मेरे पेरेंट्स मान जाते हैं तो मेरी तरफ से हाँ है. जब मम्मी और पापा देखा सैम को तो उन्होंने देख के मना कर दिया. तुम दोनों के दोनों अगर एक जैसे होंगे एक दूसरे की हेल्प कैसे करोगे. अब मैंने सैम से कहा भैया मेरे घर में तो सबने मना कर दिया, तो ना है मेरी तरफ से. शायद साल बीत गया था, हमने बात नहीं की एक दूसरे से. काफी दिनों के बाद मुझे दोबारा से कॉल आया सर, मीनू एक बार फिर से सोच के देखो. फिर मैंने उसके बारे में सोचा और पेरेंट्स के बाद क्या होगा मेरा, मैं क्या करूंगी उसके बाद. मेरे पास बात करने वाला भी कोई नहीं होगा, एटलीस्ट मेरे पास फ्रेंड तो है. और मेरा और सैम की फ्रेंडशिप बहुत अच्छी थी. मैं सारी बातें उनसे शेयर कर सकती थी इजीली। तो मैंने फिर हाँ बोली। हमारी अब शादी हो गई है और 6 साल हो गए हमारी शादी को। झगड़ा भी करते हैं, एक दूसरे के बिना रह भी नहीं सकते हैं। तो बहुत मजा आता है। और जो प्रॉब्लम मैंने जो अपने आप से सोची थी, तो वो प्रॉब्लम सब वो आई ही नहीं हमारी लाइफ में। पता ही नहीं चला ये 6 साल कब खत्म हो गए।
Okay, next slide. Can we have the last slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's just taking a little while to transition.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Meenu talks about marriage, and that was her desire, her need, her circumstances. There may be situations, marriage per se is not important. The choice to be married is what is important. And I believe often people with disabilities don't even have that choice. So all the things that we have talked about, all the barriers we have talked about, I think I would like to end with saying that this needs to change, and this would change if all of us actually become aware of this need and we understand what to do about it and how to go about it. In this picture, we have Darshana, who's herself a wheelchair user, with other young adults. And I would say that mentoring is one of the most important responsibilities that we as teachers can take on. We, all of us would remember in our young days, in our student days, having that person, that teacher, that elder person who actually helped us think through, who encouraged us to do things that we were finding hard to do, who would have talked to our parents perhaps and removed the barrier that there may have been because of parents' disapproval or disagreement. So I would say, I would like to end by saying, I would, use this conversation of last 1 hour to bring about whatever changes on the ground that you can make, be a mentor and be an agent of change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that absolutely wonderful presentation. It was really, really moving, and how you made us aware of so many aspects that we seldom think of. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Divya Jalan. I will now request our moderator, Muskan, to please take over.
Yes, sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for this wonderful, informative, and thought-provoking lecture. Now, can we have some queries? The chat box is full of queries and appreciating comments. First query is from Grishma Khobargade sir. He's asking, his question is, are there known religion-based barriers to the inclusion of people, both disability, in the mainstream society?
So say that again, are there no religion-based?
Yes, ma'am, religion-based.
Barriers for?
Are there known religion-based, one second. Are there known religion-based barriers to the inclusion of people with disability in the mainstream society?
I think religion-based differences do exist, and disability can sometimes be a barrier anyway. So religion-based differences certainly do exist.
Yeah.
And they could become a barrier in people from different religions working together and functioning together.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Second question is from Suman Bhagchandani. He's saying, ma'am, in your talk, you mentioned cultural myths and stereotype as common utterance practices to marginalize people with disability. How far do these myths intersect with gender, caste, or class?
Shamla? Shamla is here. I wonder if Shamla would like to take this.
Ma'am, could we please have her full name so we can find her in the
Shamla.
Yeah, so we have somebody by the name of Sham Sakhi, but we can, yeah.
Shamla was there in the beginning. Is she not there now?
Yes.
No, we are not able to find her in the list, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, so you are asking whether this, I'm sorry, repeat the question again, please.
And he's asking about the interconnectivity between disability, gender, class, and caste.
Absolutely. So there's definitely, they do intersect definitely, and the intersection actually makes it that much harder. So if you have disability as well as if you, gender-wise, if you are, okay, Shamla has written, please unmute me. I am signed in as.
Yes, we're just finding her.
So I'll take this question anyway, and then we'll see if she would come in on the next question.
Yeah,
so definitely this intersection of, say, disability and gender, or disability and poverty, or disability and religious minority, it certainly does exist, as the intersection exists even without disability. So gender and poverty, when they intersect, then definitely the barriers become much greater.
Shamla ma'am, you are also a co-host. You may now unmute yourself if you wish to interact. Thank you.
There I am.
Good to see you, ma'am.
So next question, can we go on to the next question?
Yes.
Add something to this.
Yes, ma'am. The next question is from Grishma Khobargade sir again. He's asking, what is the relationship between victimization and conflict with focus on people with disability? The relationship between victimization and conflict with focus on people with disability.
I'll let Shamla answer this one.
I think if we look into the social ladder, somehow people with disability are seen to be at the lowest end of the ladder. So much of the barriers that Dr. Jalan was talking about come into play, and people with disabilities are often faced with a lot of victimization because of their disability. So whether you take in situations like a conflict, like communal attacks, you take conflict like gender-based violence against women with disabilities, or in any kind of a conflicting area, because the power hierarchy plays in favor of people with more resources, more information, more muscle power, more status power in terms of social hierarchies. People with disabilities often find themselves to be in a much more difficult and vulnerable positions than their able-bodied counterparts. And this again is a result of the barriers that exist in society, which look at any form of an impairment as something that they can rule over. So when in terms of any kind of a conflict, if you see the recent conflicts that were present in Delhi as the riots, yes, people with disabilities were victimized. If we see the COVID and the impact of the COVID on the lives of people with disabilities, the more vulnerable one is because of disability, the more difficulties the people start facing there. So, and a multiple kind of barriers, what Dr. Jalan had just mentioned, when we look into the hierarchies and say that women with disabled people, disabled women, disabled poor women, disabled poor women with a different kind of a social class structure would encounter those many number of difficulties in comparison to their peers, which is proven, and there is much research that has been done, and there are narratives that are available to be able to go into the research and see the catalogs. Does that address your query?
I think it does. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful explanation. I will request Dr. Muskan to please take the next question.
Yeah, ma'am. The next question is also from, again from Khobarkare sir. He is asking, what strategies could be provided to support children with autistic spectrum disorder in mainstream settings? Should I repeat the question?
Do I get that question? You're saying in mainstream educational settings?
Ma'am, his question is, what strategies could be provided to support children with autistic spectrum disorder in mainstream settings?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it is mainstream education only.
It's mainstream education. And in mainstream education, one would need to see at what level of educational settings are we talking about? Are we talking about preschool education where there are opportunities for skill building? Are we talking about school education where we would need to look into barriers that this child will encounter, and how are we looking into educational curriculum strategies or teaching strategies or environmental barriers that would need to be addressed as a strategy, or in a college setup? Which kind of setup would we be looking into? And again, when we talk about children or people with any kind of an impairment or with autism, under the autism spectrum, there would be a range of behaviors or the level of impairment or the level of support that would be required. So it would be difficult and it would be presumptuous to say what are the strategies for autism spectrum per se. We would first of all need to look into what is the specific need that this particular child with autism spectrum have. Is it a one-to-one kind of a support? Is it an isolated space kind of a support? Is it the material support, or is it a curriculum differentiation support? Is it the attitudes of the peers that the child would require the support in? Is it the administrative procedures that the child would require more flexibility in? We would need to identify what are the different needs, what are the specific supports, and how are we going to address that? And while addressing it, we would need to say who the other stakeholders are. The class teacher, the subject teacher, the parent, any kind of a resource teacher that is specifically provided for the caregiving staff, the peers, the administrators, who are all the different players in the child's life, and how do we support them to be able to support the child with the specific need. And an intervention plan would need to be planned for.
मैम, अगला सवाल डॉक्टर रमेश बर्नवाल का है, श्यामलाल कॉलेज से है सर। उनका क्वेश्चन है, शिक्षण संस्थानों में दिव्यांग विद्यार्थियों को किस तरह की कानूनी सहायता की जरूरत पड़ती है? इसमें एनजीओ क्या भूमिका निभाते हैं?
See, आज की परिस्थिति में कानून हमारे पास दिया गया है, कानून में लिखा है कि अ चाइल्ड विद डिसेबिलिटी, जिसको आप दिव्यांगजन कह रहे हैं, वो चाइल्ड विद डिसेबिलिटी को अपनी इच्छा अनुसार अगर वो मेन स्ट्रीम एजुकेशन में चाहते हैं एडमिशन, वहाँ पे मिला जाए, या स्पेशल स्कूल स्पेशल इंस्टीट्यूशन में चाहते हैं वहाँ पे मिला जाए। बट आज की परिस्थिति ऐसी है कि मेन स्ट्रीम एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस में आसानी से एडमिशन नहीं हो पाता है, तो वहाँ पे एनजीओज की ज़रूरत होती है टू बी एबल टू फैसिलिटेट दैट एडमिशन प्रोसेस अलोंग विथ द पेरेंट्स, क्योंकि बच्चा अगर छोटा है वो अपने आप एडमिशन नहीं करवा पाएगा, उनको अपने माता पिता के द्वारा जाना पड़ेगा, तो अभिभावकों को सपोर्ट करने की ज़रूरत होगी। And the Kanun, the law also talks about accommodations as per the need of the person with disability. और कानून में 21 types of impairments listed हैं, और हर impairment के लिए किस तरीके का accommodation चाहिए होगा वो CBSE ने workout किया हुआ है। वो सारे schools तक, अध्यापकों तक पहुंचता नहीं है, parents तक पहुंचता नहीं है, जबकि हमारे वेबसाइट्स में दिया गया है, बट अक्सर लोग वेबसाइट तक भी पहुंच नहीं पाते हैं। तो वहाँ पे एनजीओज की एक इम्पॉर्टेंट रोल बन जाती है कि इस इंफॉर्मेशन को हम किस तरीके से सरलता से सिंपल फॉर्मेट्स में, सिंपल लैंग्वेज में हम पेरेंट्स तक और लर्नर्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज तक पहुंचा पाए। सारी सुविधाएं कानून में अभी दी गई हैं, चाहे वो ट्रांसपोर्ट हो, चाहे वो स्क्राइब हो, चाहे फ्री टेक्स्ट बुक्स हो, चाहे एक्सेसिबल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, रीजनेबल एकोमोडेशंस की पूरी लिस्ट दी गई है वहाँ पे, एंड करिकुलर एडेप्टेशंस के लिए कहा गया है। तो लिस्टेड सुविधाएं हैं वहाँ पर, और हमें उन्हें समझना है और उनको लेकर फैमिलीज तक और इंस्टीट्यूशंस तक पहुंचाना है।
थैंक यू सो मच मैम। नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज,
एक मिनट, सभी कॉलेजेस में इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी सेल्स भी, तो उनकी भी सहायता ली जा सकती है इस कानूनी तरह की चीजों को।
जी जी, थैंक यू मैम। मैम, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज फ्रॉम सोनम जैंको। ही इज आस्किंग, what are the government ordinances and regulation in context to the inclusion in the country, and how much that has been achieved so far? What are the facilities that has been provided by government to the differently able persons, especially in education and other fields of work?
See, the 2016 Act of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which Dr. Jalan had mentioned, provides for an inclusive environment in many spheres: education, health, employment, elections, and being counted as part of the census. It provides for every area of life that you and I take for granted. It says that people with disabilities enjoy the same rights and privileges as their counterparts. So there is the law, the Rights of Persons with Disability, that is given, and specifically mentions about the right to inclusive education. The National Education Policy of 2020 takes on from the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act and talks about inclusive education right from early childhood education at an Anganwadi level to the highest level of higher education. So the law provides for education for people with disabilities, which is a major step forward. Now, how it gets implemented? Education is a state subject, and it differs from state to state how it's getting implemented. There are states like Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, which are very, very progressive in inclusive education. Delhi's taken a leap forward in looking into curricular reforms in school education and has taken that forward. Ambedkar University has a disability studies under its university, looking into integrating disability in all other domains that the college offers to its students. So there's a lot that has been done in terms of thinking and putting it on paper and putting it as part of law and policy. It depends upon the implementing agencies, the universities, the colleges, the schools, the state governments monitoring, controlling them to see how it gets implemented in the letter and spirit of the law and the policy there. And every state is at various levels of implementing it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. टाइम हमारे पास बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है, तो एक आखिरी क्वेश्चन हम ले रहे हैं, एक आखिरी सवाल ले रहे हैं विकास कपूर जी का. उनका जो सवाल है वो क्वेरी और कमेंट दोनों का मिक्सचर है. ही सेइंग, मैम, इज दिस मैम, it may sound a bit awkward, but while talking about physical barriers, sometimes it is very difficult to reconcile the genuine barriers when put for the security reasons, and the same roadback would become some extra barriers for the person with disability. To cite an example, during the celebrations of national days, for example 15 August, January, 26 January, etc., while visiting any public place like Delhi Metro, they will put so many short pillars tied with belts to block certain passages. However, these in turn out to be a great and indeed some extra layer of barriers for the person with physical disability. It's a comment come query. Would you like to respond on this?
आप क्या सोचते हैं इसमें वो बैरियर्स नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के लिए, आम जनता के लिए इस तरीके से बनाए जाएं कि वो सभी के लिए सुविधाजनक हो, या ऐसे बनाए जाएं कि वो एक सेक्शन ऑफ पॉपुलेशन के लिए हैं और दूसरे सेक्शन के लिए और वो बैरियर्स बना देता है? किस तरीके के प्रोविजंस होने चाहिए?
ऐसा तो कुछ मेंशन नहीं किया गया है मैम. कोई बात नहीं, हम अभी भी हमारे पास कुछ सवाल हैं, टाइम हमारे पास बहुत ज्यादा है.
तो मैं उनसे इसलिए पूछ रही थी क्योंकि हमें ऐसी परिस्थितियों से हमें अपने आप को रिफ्लेक्ट करने, ये परिस्थितियां अपने आप में रिफ्लेक्ट करने का मौका देता है. तो अगर ये हमको मजबूर करता है सोचने के लिए कि हाँ, अगर यहाँ पे ये बुलाज लगी गई हैं कि आम जनता को वहाँ पे आने से रोका जाता है, और वो बुलाज लगाने की वजह से वो पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटी के लिए और बैरियर्स ज़्यादा हो जाता है उसमें. तो हम उसमें क्या कर सकते हैं? वहाँ पे सबसे पहले देखना होगा कि अगर हम सिर्फ एक सिचुएशन के लिए सोचें तो उस सिचुएशन का आंसर मिल सकता है, सोल्यूशन मिल सकता है. वहाँ के एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर से बैठ के सोचना पड़ेगा कि किस तरीके से हम इसको बनाएं ताकि वो पीपल मूवमेंट के लिए, किसी भी जनता की मूवमेंट में वो बाधा ना आए, और उसमें पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटी के मूवमेंट के लिए भी बाधा ना आए. और वहाँ पे फिजिकल स्ट्रक्चर्स को अगर हम चेंज नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, क्या वहाँ पे हम ह्यूमन सपोर्ट दे सकते हैं? और उस ह्यूमन सपोर्ट के आधार से, सपोर्ट से, people with disability would be able to cross over the barrier or move around the barrier to be able to reach their destination. जब ये बनाए जाते हैं, अक्सर ये देखा गया है कि बनाने वाले की दृष्टि अगर सभी जनता के ऊपर होती है तब इस प्रकार की बाधा नहीं आती है. अगर उनकी दृष्टि होती है कि हमें यहाँ पे सिर्फ एक रोक लगाना है, चाहे वो कोई भी हो, वहाँ पे रोक लगा दिया जाता है. और अगर वो सभी के लिए it's important that everybody follows that, and it's also imperative for people with disabilities to follow that, then of course वहाँ पे बुलाज लगाने की जरूरत होगी ताकि वो सभी के लिए applicable हो. और जो बाकी लोगों के लिए जो provisions दी जा रही हैं उसको क्रॉस ओवर करके या उसके अराउंड जाने के लिए उसी प्रकार की सुविधाएं पीपल विद डिसेबिलिटी के भी दी जाएं. So it's again what Dr. in the beginning, attitudes, institutional barriers, how do we look at it? For whom are we providing for? And are we looking into all needs and all the different categories of people who would be using that particular service? चाहे वो रेलवे स्टेशन में हो, चाहे वो मेट्रो स्टेशन में हो, चाहे वो यूनिवर्सिटी कॉलेज लेवल पे हो.
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू सो मच. बहुत सुंदर, सारगर्भित और बहुत सेंसिटिव इशू पे आप लोगों ने अपनी बात इतने अच्छे से रखी. थैंक यू दिव्या मैम, थैंक यू श्यामला मैम. अभी मैं इनवाइट करती हूँ स्मृति मैम को फॉर द फॉर्मल वोट ऑफ थैंक्स. थैंक यू.
Good evening, everyone. I hope so. I am audible to everyone. It is very difficult. We have very small span of relationship, but yeah, Divya ma'am has become almost like a friend to me, you know, and across the age, cutting the age barrier and everything. Now you feel like she is there for you. She listens to you, right? Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Yeah, I would like to make one comment. One person was asking about religious barrier, and I would like to say religion is the biggest barrier in terms of disability. हम कर्मों का फल है, पाप की सजा है. Any religion, be it any religion, right? We start with negativity. If you do something bad, you will have to go through all this. आपको next जन्म में ये सहना पड़ेगा. You have to go through disability. पाप की सजा है. Your children will be punished, be it any religion, you know. So like if you ask me, religion is the biggest barrier because it creates wrong perspective, negative perspective in people's mind, and it becomes difficult for people and society to accept disabled because of mainly religious perspective, what we see through sometimes, many a times in fact. I would like to thank Divya ma'am for accepting our invitation in such a short notice and giving such a wonderful presentation, ma'am. Like, it was wonderful. And I would like to thank Shyamla ma'am as well, though like we have not spoken once also, and ma'am has come graciously accepted. And you know, the way she has answered questions, the way she has handled queries, it was great. It was mesmerizing, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being there, for answering, for accepting, and thank you for everything. And most importantly, thank you for your friendship. Thank you, ma'am.